Point number one is probably the easiest and the most obvious one. Straight up overpaying for the practice. A lot of times folks, they see one, they fall in love with the site or they fall in love with the aesthetic of the practice and they just can't get that out of their mind. And now they're emotionally hooked. We know that buyers buy emotionally. Number two, really ignoring the practice's financial health. Again, they're in love. They're not even seeing the numbers. They're not paying attention. They see 1.4 million in revenue maybe. They don't realize 80% expenses. They're overpaying their hygienist. They're overpaying their entire team. They're overpaying everybody. And in the end, there is no profit inside of that. Number four, poor transition planning with the seller. There's so many times where that seller has incredible goodwill and you just don't focus on it.
Welcome back to another episode of Dental Marketing Theory. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I'm the owner of SMC National, where we help offices just like yours level the playing field against the big guys out there so you can grow the way that you want. But you can't grow if you're making one of these 7 deadly sins of buying a practice. Today, I have the one, the only, Josh Gwinn, who's the co-founder and CEO of Optimized Practice Alliance. He does an amazing job today of telling us what the top 7 things are, mistakes that dentists just make when they're buying a practice. A lot of them have to do with emotions rather than using data. And it was very, very insightful. It's a quick list. You'll learn a lot from it. And if you're thinking about buying a practice in the future, this is for you. Stay tuned. All right, we are live. And today we're going to be talking about the 7 mistakes that dentists make when buying a practice. So Josh, why don't you hit us with point number 1?
Yeah, point number 1 is probably the easiest and the most obvious one. Straight up overpaying for the practice. A lot of times folks, they see one, they fall in love with the site or they fall in love with the aesthetic of the practice and they just can't get that out of their mind. And now they're emotionally hooked. And we know that buyers buy emotionally. This is where they walk in and again, they lose every time in this situation. So that's probably the biggest thing that I see. And ways that they can avoid that, again, and shockingly, some people don't do this, but normalize EBITDA. Look at 3 years worth of financials and a trailing 12 months and look for any big trends or bumps in revenues, spikes, anything like that. So that's the biggest thing that I see. Number 1, overpaying for the practice.
I love that. That happens in houses too, right? We go and we're looking for a house and then it's like we find one that has the perfect backyard with the perfect pool. So we're like, we're going to bid up on it, but you end up overpaying for the house and you don't get as good of a house, but you got a better pool that you like. And that's not, it might be a good living situation, but it might not be the best financial decision. And I see that in practices as well. What's number 2?
Yeah, number 2, really ignoring the practice's financial health. Again, they're in love. They're not even seeing the numbers. They're not paying attention. They see 1.4 million in revenue maybe, and they don't realize 80% expenses. They're overpaying their hygienist. They're overpaying their entire team. They're overpaying everybody. And in the end, there is no profit inside of that. So, say you're paying 70, 80%. Of revenue, you didn't even look at the rest of it. So the cost structure is so messed up and it's going to be so hard to unwind that you're going to be running at a loss for quite a long time if you're not careful.
Wow, that's a really good point, because with that one, it's like if your hygienist, let's just use that one, your hygienists are way overpaid. And so you're going to go in and you're going to try to fix that, right? Because you want to make money in your business decision, right? And what happens, your hygienist quit. And then what happens when your hygienist quit? Your patients leave. And then what happens then? Then you're going to have to overpay for marketing to drive in more new patients to make up for the lost time and energy and money. And so it would have just been better to pick a different practice. So I like that one. What's number 3?
Not assessing fully patient retention and referral sources. Multiple times I've seen someone go in, man, the practice looks great, everything's super healthy. And then they find out that, 30% of the new patients or 30% of all patients are coming from a specific referral source that's about to in-house whatever service they provide. And so that just completely drops off. Now you're 30% down in overall patients, and that's a big loser. And if you don't have a great patient retention system, usually in a GP practice rolling through hygiene, where you're making sure that you've got 80, 90% of those patients coming back every 6 to 8 months to get something done in their hygiene program, then you're in deep trouble. And again, to your point, you're going to overpay for marketing. You're going to start to panic and really have to push the button and throw a bunch of cash down a hole to get patients in there.
Ooh, that was a good one. That's a good one. So patient retention. What's number 4?
Number 4, poor transition planning with the seller. There's so many times where that seller has incredible goodwill and you just don't focus on it. And they're like, hey, I sold it 2 weeks later. They're completely gone. There's no handoff for the patients. The patients have no trust with the new provider coming in. They have no idea what's happening. Team is in the same position. The team just sees that there was a buyout. Now there's a ton of fear. They're out. A lot of times they leave, and now you have this massive turnover issue that you're dealing with as soon as you just put this big financial piece out.
Yeah, because a lot of people miss that, right? And it's hard. I get it, because when you're buying a business, you're going and thinking about macro, right? So it's like, what's the value of the business? What's the EBITDA? You're looking at all the things we just talked about. But then the second you buy it, now you have to worry about the micro, which is like, how does Betty Sue, patient that's been with you for 20 years, now feel about the old doctor leaving? And then how is that transition happening? Same with team members. A practice isn't very valuable if your team all leaves right away when you buy it, right? You're really buying two things typically. You're buying the patients and you're buying the team. And if you end up losing those, man, that's really painful. So far, I love this. I love the direction we're going. So we got overpaying. That's the biggest one. Ignoring financial health of the practice, like overlooking certain problems in the practice. Number 3, patient retention. Are they actually retaining their patients, or are they really is it a lot of smoke and mirrors with marketing and things like that? Number 4, owner handoff. What would number 5 be?
For me, number 5 is not evaluating the staff and office culture, not understanding who the real influencers are inside the staff, and potentially making big mistakes when you come in, especially in a long-term staff. There's always someone, and it's not always the dentist, who is the biggest influencer. And sometimes that's a positive thing, and sometimes that's a very negative thing. You have to understand that going in so you can reset expectations, set the tone, and help them understand and build trust with them so that you can retain that staff and keep that patient flow occurring over and over and over. And I just don't see a lot of buyers spending time or enough time doing this pre-transaction.
So that's a tough one, right? So it's like, generally speaking, dental offices don't have the best cultures, right? Like, generally speaking, you're probably in a position where you can improve culture. But that's tricky, right? Because you don't want to come in and also make a bunch of changes, because culture is one thing and changes are another thing. And if you come in, even if they're for the good, you do a bunch of changes, people get scared, right? That causes fear. So how does someone even go about gauging that or figuring that out in your experience?
Yeah, a lot of it start with patient reviews. You're going to see some things in there, and you're really looking for the negative reviews. You're looking for kind of the red flags that pop up. And if the same names come up over and over, you're going to want to ask a whole bunch of questions. Some questions I like to ask to the owners are, talk to me about how you invest in staff development. If the answer is I don't, there's a little bit of something to think about there, and something that you can bring to the table day one that will be different and additive for that staff that might bring something out. The other thing that you would want to ask is, Doc, if you were me coming in and buying this for the first time, what would you do? What would you do differently? How would you treat your staff? Who would you rely on as kind of your maven inside the practice to get you started so that you could really get things off the ground? And you can get some real insight there, especially if you built a great relationship with the seller, Doc.
That's great. Awesome. All right. So number 5 is culture. What's number 6?
Number 6 is really, really, really interesting to me, because it's really about assuming that all existing systems and processes actually work. And here's what I mean specifically. You may come up against an incredibly prepared seller who, every time you ask a question, they've got a completely, rolled out program for you. And they say, here's how we do retention. Here's how we do patient marketing. Here's every single thing that we do. But then dig into the metrics behind those. Do they actually work? Are they doing things that are beneficial for the practice? Or again, is this just window dressing because they had a really great consultant that tuned them up before they went to transaction? And that happens all the time. We see that, they'll lay out a whole list.
I have a client right now who reached out to us and said, Gary, we're canceling all marketing. And I was like, why? Like, I thought we were doing good. What's going on? He's all, no. You guys didn't do anything wrong. I'm selling the practice. And I said, Doc, you're going to kill new patient flow. He's like, I'd rather cut cost right now. He's putting, not manipulating is probably the wrong word. He's putting the numbers in his favor for what the seller cares about, which is lower your cost. And I'm like, but it's going to hurt your new patient numbers. And he's like, that's not something that we're looking at. Like, it's not a big deal. And That's someone else's problem, right? And I'm like, dude, it's going to be hard to turn it back on, but it's not part of the deal, right? The deal was get your costs down, and that's how he's going to move the practice to this person. And so he's just cutting marketing, and he was like, don't worry about it, Gary. I'm going to buy another one and do it again. We'll use you guys when it happens in 6 months. So it wasn't, first I thought it was a marketing problem, but it wasn't. It was actually a deal had these contingencies in them, and marketing a new patient, which wasn't part of it. So it was just like, cut it out.
That's right. And we see a lot of times where, and again, even in bank presentations, I've seen this happen. I've been on both sides of it, where someone comes in and we know there's specific questions they're going to ask. How do you? What do you do when? And you want to have answers for those. But again, just surface level answers aren't what I'm talking about here. I want to see the closed loop matrices behind those programs so you can show me the benefit of what you're actually executing on a daily basis. Without that, that's just, again, it's just a showpiece. And I'm going to look at it with a little more skepticism. And I would advise any buyer to do the same thing.
And so what was the title? That was number 6, right? What would you title that one again?
Just assuming all existing systems and processes actually work.
Okay, so reviewing systems. Okay, that's good. So let's go over these really quickly. So we got, okay, so 7 biggest mistakes that dentists are making when they're buying a practice. Number 1 is overpaying. Number 2, ignoring financial health. Number 3, patient retention, like understanding, are we truly retaining the patients or not? Number 4, owner handoff, taking advantage of the owner at like part of the deal is you're going to help me transition the team and the patients.
Here's a very specific plan we're going to execute for X amount of days. This every day. That's to that detail. Yes.
Yeah. Which is great because when you're going to sign the papers, they're willing to do all that stuff. But after you sign the papers, they might be like, no, I don't want to do that. Number 5 is culture. So really understanding the culture and then where you can actually move the needles. Number 6 is reviewing all systems. What's number 7?
Number 7 is understanding the marketing and branding shift. Where is it currently? And what are you going to do to change it, if anything? And it goes to what you were just saying. One of the biggest drivers of cost and one of the first things that practice sellers are advised to change or take out is marketing. And I see it all the time. I just reviewed a 13 office group that was one of my clients was looking to potentially bid on. And inside of this, they had over $1 million in marketing spend that they wanted to add back. This is all EBITDA. And it's like, no way. Where's your new patients going to come from? I mean, to our exact conversation, if you cut off all marketing and you have 250 new patients, a month in this group, and you cut off marketing, those patients are gone. Now what? I'm not buying that, right? So it really is having a clear understanding of what is the current marketing program, where are your referrals coming from? And it does go back to the referral source piece and the marketing. Where are they coming from? How are you getting new patients? And then what are you planning? Are you going to change the name? How much goodwill in the community are you going to lose if you do that? What's the branding look like going forward? How are you going to rebrand the website? How are you going to prepare social media, signage? Any patient reactivation campaigns, you have to go step by step through those processes and have a plan laid out and understand the potential impacts that those could have on your revenue as you're kind of laying out your cash flow planning for the coming few months.
Wow, that's really powerful. Good stuff. This is a great little checklist that really helps you really quickly just put your mind in the right place. Again, buying a practice or buying anything really is such an emotional decision. And you don't even realize it when you get caught up in it, right? Like in the moment, you don't realize that you're being emotional or else no one would do it. So this list, I think, is very thorough and helps you, okay, even thinking about these things, are these things even on my radar? If someone wants to reach out to you and ask you more questions about this or has a question about a deal that they're working on, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Man, a couple ways. LinkedIn, Joshua Gwinn, LinkedIn, at Josh Gwinn CEO on Instagram. OptimizePS.com is the website where you can kind of click in, see some of the things we're doing, some of the case studies, some of the buying and selling. We've bought and sold multiple DSOs, multiple practices. So we really have a depth of knowledge in this. And one thing we didn't get to mention, but I will mention here, have a great dental focused CPA on your side. The same guy that you've done business with for a long time may not be prepared to help you in an M&A transaction. Make sure your legal team is tight. And if you need a great consultant, we know a whole bunch of them at Optimize. So that'd be the best way to grab us on social or on the website, or joshua.gwinn@optimizeps.com is my email.
Awesome. Great job today. Appreciate you coming on.
All right, Gary, I appreciate you. Anything you need, man, let me know. See ya.